Hey, how's it going guys? My name is Eelwood and today we are looking at another old school classic game, Resident Evil 3 for the PlayStation 1. Since we are in the month of Halloween and because we've already looked at Resident Evil 2 during our 50 sub special, I thought we may as well review number 3 while we're at it and answer the ultimate question, is it worth your time? So, Resident Evil 3 is a single-player survival horror game. Set in, you probably guessed it, a zombie-infested town called Raccoon City. You take on the role of Jill Valentine this time, set 24 hours before the events of Resident Evil 2. You'll be navigating zombie-infested streets, solving puzzles, inventory managing, discovering new areas, and avoiding death as best you can. But this time while also having our buddy Nemesis to keep you company on your way. So, aesthetically the game's visuals are like its predecessors, fucking incredible. For back in the day anyway. Definitely a subtle upgrade over Resident Evil 2 as well, in terms of animation quality, visual effects and scenery. Same fixed camera angles and 2D backgrounds like its predecessors of course, except with even better overall foreground quality. Colours used are as always dark and dull to maintain the game's serious, realistic, urban feel. The pretend light effects from the background designs are pretty good, but no actual lighting effects that interact with characters to speak of, other than your very rare occasional fire effects and gunshot flashes. The UI is non-existent, which I always love. Level layouts are unique, just right, and surprisingly very memorable. Probably the most memorable in my opinion, especially when backtracking. Textures and detail are just as impressive. Same level of design quality as expected. The game feels a lot larger in size due to the majority of the game being located outdoors as opposed to in. This does provide a higher detail quality to the background graphics that do provide a slightly more immersive visual experience, but it does take away from the claustrophobic feel that you had in previous titles. They've also put in subtle scenery changes and better interactable objects, like when the kitchen explodes and shows the damage aftermath, or when a door blows open due to the building being on fire. Small immersive visual touches that you wouldn't see in Resident Evil 1 and 2. Love it. Character and enemy designs are even higher quality, with subtle upgrades to movement, stationary and in-action animations that really add to the overall visual immersion. The new zombie designs I'm not a big fan of personally compared to Resident Evil 2, as I find these ones have less facial features, very similar skin designs and smaller heads. All other enemies though are a big improvement, like the hunters, brain suckers and of course the unmissable asset, the Nemesis himself. More varied attacks, more intelligent AI and of course immersive designs that strike terror easily, especially when you're stuck in a corner or overwhelmed by multiple enemies at once. The Nemesis is of course one of the best visual assets in the game due to his many forms, occasional rocket launcher and determination to smack you in the face until you die. Always a very high consistent aesthetic quality, but of course quite dated. The OSTs in Resident Evil 3 are just like other titles in the early series, fucking awesome. Not quite as good as Resident Evil 2 tracks in my personal opinion, but very good regardless. The Tension Nemesis track that you'll be hearing a lot of is probably the best track in the game, and sounds very similar to the Resident Evil 2 style of track. But the majority of Resident Evil 3 tracks are a lot more in-your-face, intense action tracks overall I'd say, that do fit the gameplay very well, giving more of a covert, action, kind of military feel to the game, rather than that raw fear, anticipation and tension that you get from other titles. The fear is a lot more in the moment alertness, rather than that looming fear of what's around each corner. Not at all a bad thing, but when you've got some of the best horror tracks in gaming to compete with, it's hard to maintain that consistency. Everything else sound related is just as immersive and high quality as the others, with the odd improvement here and there like enemies taking damage, new weapon sounds and general character sounds. The voice acting is getting considerably better by the third installment, with the various voiced cutscenes being a lot more immersive. Overall a very high standard sound quality as always. Now for the gameplay. So, Resident Evil 3 does have two difficulty options to choose from before you play. You can choose between easy and hard mode. Pretty big difference between the two. On easy, you start off with way too many weapons, ammo and healing items for the game to be considered challenging to an experienced player. Hard mode is pretty much the opposite, where you start off with just a handgun with 15 bullets and that's pretty much it. I played Resident Evil 3 the most when I was about 9 years old roughly. And put it this way, I was way too scared to play on hard mode. Other things are affected of course, like enemy damage dealt, player damage dealt, item placement, specific weapons acquired and mixed up a bit, and probably the most important difference is killing the Nemesis on easy gets you nothing, but killing him on hard mode will get you different items, weapons and weapon parts. In this particular playthrough, I managed to get the 2 parts of the upgraded handgun and the first aid spray box. But if you can actually kill him every time you see him, you can actually get an upgraded shotgun and an assault rifle, I believe. Couple of words of advice, play hard mode only, fuck it. More fun, more challenging and much more rewarding. As this is the 3rd installment of the series, it again shares the same concept as the others. Finding items, keys, unlocking doors, solving puzzles, with a bigger focus on inventory management, more enemies to deal with, and that fucker Nemesis giving you no breathing space when his OST is playing. So once you've chosen your difficulty, you watch an intro cutscene, take control of your character and play. As I said in my Resident Evil 2 review, no stats, levels or skills, just you, your equipment, weapons and ammo. With the addition of limited inventory space, item boxes in save rooms, limited ink ribbons to save the game and all that good stuff. In Resident Evil 3 specifically though, you can now find gunpowder which can be combined in different ways to make ammo for a specific weapon of choice. A very good addition to the game which you will need on hard mode due to the reduced amount of ammo you'll be finding normally, and if you want to actually kill the Nemesis at least twice. Character controls are pretty much the same. Classic tank controls, aim, shoot, pick up, use and combine items is all you really need. Fortunately though, Resident Evil 3 does introduce the ability to pivot, which is changing to the opposite direction quickly, and you can now actually dodge/barge enemies to avoid damage taken, which when I discovered as a kid, couldn't fucking believe it. If you press either the aim or the shoot button, the exact moment that you would normally take damage, your character instead either dodges or barges depending on the enemy attacking. Fucking awesome. In some cases you can even perform a roll then crouch fire, which looks cool as fuck. Couldn't get it to happen in my gameplay footage though sadly, but if you watch a speedrun you'll probably see it there. If you can become really good at this game, you could probably complete the whole game by dodging all forms of damage. But as I said, it's not as easy as you think and will take a lot of practice to do it consistently. Puzzles in RE3 aren't that hard in this game either. They do however introduce a solution randomizer per playthrough in the form of a few possible solutions to a specific obstacle like key codes or safe lock codes, which years ago made me think I was losing my mind because that wasn't very common in games back in the day. There is one puzzle though, the one with the water sample machine. Literally it took me about 3 hours to figure out when I was a kid. For some reason I could not grasp the concept of it and in the end managed to complete it through clicking pretty much randomly if I remember correctly. Bad times. A couple of other smaller additions to the game over other titles. I found that RE3's backtracking is considerably less, which is good. You can actually have minor deviations in your path if certain things are done in certain orders. Considering you only play as Jill in this game, there are plenty of cutscenes and interactions with other characters. You can even play as Carlos during a mandatory section of the game. Certain cutscenes in the game that usually include the Nemesis are actually interactive now. They give you 2 options on screen with a timer that give different outcomes depending on what you chose. Another very interesting addition. Once you've completed the game, you can also take on the Mercenaries minigame where you can play as different characters that you met in the main game with different equipment loadouts, where you need to get to a set area on a time limit and gain as much time as possible by killing enemies and saving civilians. Much easier than the hunk minigame from RE2 in my opinion, and a lot more fun to be honest. Once completed, you generate dollars that you can spend on unlimited ammo weapons for when you play the normal game again. Very good idea. And finally, the obvious selling point of the game is definitely the combat. The varying monsters to deal with, explosive containers, interactable objects, dodge/barge mechanic, and the devastating weapon effects are all very immersive and very satisfying. This combined with the game's notable challenge level on hard and the fact that you've got the Nemesis following you around left, right and centre does make the game very fun and really shines during the Mercenaries mini-game. Even after 20 odd years, it still doesn't get old. So, for the ultimate question, is it worth your time? The experience, replayability and immersion it provides are amazing, the combat is an impressive step up from its predecessors, and it's a truly welcomed addition to the core old school trilogy. I'm going to give this game a 4.5 star or 90 out of 100. It's clearly an amazing game no matter what way you look at it, but from an overall immersive gaming experience perspective, what it lacks in ominous tension, looming fear, it makes up for with action-packed, no breathing space urgency. The soundtrack quality consistency isn't as good when compared to RE2 sadly, and I found the base plot in general not quite as good either. But again, either way, the game is amazing. It shits on most horror games of its time, but when compared to other games of its own series, I wouldn't necessarily call it a successor to its previous title. I love the constant interactions with Nemesis, the interactable cutscenes, the skill level needed to dodge/barge consistently, the route layout formula, and much more. I remember the first disc I owned back when I was about 9 was so scratched it was impossible to watch cutscenes without it stuttering, and for years I couldn't get past this area with the park gate. You'd open the gate to a black screen that would not move no matter what you did to try to get past it. And the Nemesis fight in the acid room with only one first aid spray took me a long time to finish as a kid. It was nuts. A lot of good and bad memories over the years, but as you probably guessed already, makes it onto my recommended list with flying colours. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like. Subscribe if you want to see more games I'll be reviewing each week. I'll try to prioritise horror games for the remainder of October, just to get you guys into the Halloween spirit. I might even review a FNAF game. I don't know yet. We'll see. But as always, all the best guys. Take care.